Hi, today we're going to be learning how to replace a string on either our bass, cello, viola, or violin instrument. Okay. The materials that we're going to need for this are going to be a new string or set of strings, when we purchase our strings, make sure that we get the correct string for replacement. On a violin, there are A, E, D, and G strings, so we want to make sure if we're replacing a G string, we get a G string replacement. Another thing to note on the strings that you've purchased, on one end where it connects to the bottom part of the instrument, we'll have either a loop or a ball on it. For this particular application, that I'm going to be needing a ball, and for the majority of the string instruments out there, you will also need a ball. So first off, we need a replacement string, and the second thing we'll need is a mechanical pencil, so we can apply graphite in the small grooves on the instrument where the string can build up friction. Okay. So before we start, let's review some of the terminology on our instrument, as these will be terms that we'll be referring to today. Okay, so from the very top of our instrument, we have this ornamental piece of woodwork, and this is actually referred to as the scroll. If you take a look at it closer, you can imagine why that would resemble that, because it closely resembles like a scroll of parchment paper. The next thing we have as we move down the body is we have the peg box into which our string pegs are inserted. You will have two on the left side and two on the right side. Okay. Moving down, so your string will be attached into the peg in the peg box, at which point it will cross over a slight bump here, and this is referred to as the nut. And in the nut there is a groove for your string, and that's where we're first going to apply some graphite. Moving down into the body of the instrument, we have the fingerboard, we have the neck, and the fingerboard. The neck itself is the backside here, and the fingerboard on the front. And then moving farther down, this is the next point where your string will cross over it's literally called the bridge. I was going to say the bridge point, but yes, it is the bridge. This component right here, the bridge, is where we're going to apply our second application of graphite from our mechanical pencil. Again, just right there in the groove. And then on the end here, we have our tailpiece. And the tailpiece is where the other termination point of the string will be connected to. Some instruments have multiple fine tuners in the tailpiece into which the string will be inserted. This allows for micro adjustments of the string. Typically for large adjustments, you use the pegs. And then when you get close enough, there may be times where it's not quite in tune on your string. You're going to use the fine tuner. To the body itself, we have openings in the body which are called F-holes. And you can take a guess as to why those are maybe referred to as F-holes. Okay? The F-hole itself has a notch in the middle of it, and those are indicators as to where the bridge placement should be on your instrument. That is important to note, because if you take a look inside the F-hole of your instrument, you will see a wooden post. The wooden post in there is connecting the front body of your instrument to the rear body of your instrument, creating a solid reverberation chamber and allowing the sound of your instrument to really sing out and be amplified. So on that note, it is very important that when you replace the strings on your instrument, you do it one at a time. Okay? We want to keep tension and pressure on the bridge for two reasons. Number one, if we were to replace all the strings at once and take all the tension off, your bridge would fall off because it's no longer held in place. And it's simply held in place right now by the tension on the strings. The placement of your bridge is a very precise location based on the measurement from the nut of your instrument to the center part over here. And in that, inside your instrument, the sound post that is in there is not glued, it's held in there by tension as well. So removing all the strings off your instrument will not only potentially make it will make your bridge fall off, but the sound post inside could potentially fall out. And without that sound post, your instrument will have a less lively sound. It will not be as loud, and some would refer to it almost as like a dead tone quality. It's not as bright and lively. So as a whole, your instrument, the sound that is going on here, the strings are vibrating and transmitting and transferring the sound vibrations through the bridge, through the front face of the body, through the sound post, to the back body of your instrument, and as a whole creating this reverberation chamber. So those are important things to know. At this point, let's go ahead and get started in putting our string on our instrument. Okay? For demonstration purposes, I'm going to show on the peg, I'm going to take the peg out just to show the crisscross pattern that will make sure that our string stays in place in the peg. Okay? First, when I insert it in, I'm going to have about 3/4 of an inch to an inch sticking out the other end, and I will begin turning the peg towards the scroll. Okay? When I do this, first, the direction that I'm going to want my string to go will be towards the grip of the peg. So in this case, it's going to be going to the left of the peg, as this peg's grip is on the left side of the peg box. Okay? So I'll do about one rotation, cross it over to the right side on the other side of the hole that I had inserted my string into, do one rotation, and then cross it back over one more time, and then at that point I'll continue to roll the peg, or continue to reel the peg so that the string gradually makes its way over towards the actual grip part of the peg. Okay, so I'm going to get started with that. Put my peg back in, and it may be hard to slide the string into the actual hole of the peg while it's pushed all the way in. So I have my peg pulled out a little bit so that I have clear access in that channel where the string is going to go. That way I don't have to try to insert the string through a different part and cross over the other strings. Okay, so put that in about 3/4 of an inch. I'm turning it towards the scroll, and it is crossed over on the left side, and then I cross it over to the right side one time, and then cross it back over to the left side. And at this point, I'm going to continue to, I'll do about 2 or 3 reels on that peg. Okay, at this point, I need to attach the other end to the tailpiece. So I'm going to keep tension on this part by the peg box while I then straighten out my string and insert it into the fine tuner. If you have a fine tuner on your instrument, loosen it up to the point where it's just barely engaging the fine tuner. Typically what winds up happening is over time we tighten in our fine tuners over and over and over again, and it winds up maxed out all the way in. You have no more room to fine tune it. So I'm going to back it out a little bit. Okay, and at this point I'm going to slide my string into my fine tuner. Okay, I'm trying to be careful in how hard I push on the tailpiece because I don't want to damage the front face of my instrument. Okay, so slowly bringing it up to tension. Okay, and as I'm tightening my peg into the peg box, I'm pushing it into the peg box to make sure that it holds. Okay. Okay, so my string is on there, and a couple things to note at this point. You will need to retune this string several times, more frequently than you normally would on a set of strings that have been on there for a while. The string is stretching until it finds its equilibrium. Okay, So if you need to replace a string and you're doing it like right before a performance, you're going to have problems with intonation and keeping your instrument in tune throughout the performance. I would say it takes about 2 days or so until it reaches that equilibrium. So if you're going to replace a string or a set of strings on your instrument, try to do it a couple days in advance of a major performance. The other thing to note is in the process of putting this on, our bridge may potentially have shifted and leaned slightly towards the fingerboard. So we want to double check that the rear, this is the rear towards the tailpiece of the bridge, is vertical, and there'll be a gradient slope towards the fingerboard. So if I need to make a micro adjustment, I'm just taking the top of it and ever so slightly moving it backwards. Again, taking a look at the notches on my F-holes to make sure that my bridge placement is in the ideal spot and it's not leaning more or less in one direction or the other. So at this point, it comes down to tuning and retuning, but your instrument is ready to go and you've replaced your string. We've replaced the string on our instrument successfully, and that's it for today.